AEW has been a beautiful disaster since the day Cody Rhodes and them started this little engine that could. And despite being in the fourth quarter of just its 6th year in existence, AEW has 50 years worth of drama. Shoot promos, backstage fights, top talent leaving, exploding barbed wire, and that's just a short list. Today, we're gonna talk about some of the biggest controversies in the young history of AEW. And now that I mention it, this top 10 list isn't even the long list. If I were to do a proper list of all AEW's controversies over the years, it would basically be a PWI 500 of controversy. But what's the biggest controversy in AEW history? Between all the controversial figures who walked through the doors of Daly's place over the years, and a complete lack of authority when it comes to those doors thanks to Do Nothing CEO Tony Khan, it's anybody's game. Subscribe and Kikongo. Let's start with a pair of honorable mentions, first with Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy has a long, sad history of substance abuse. At his peak, he could have supplanted John Cena for a while as the guy, but Hardy simply could not be trusted because his list of wellness violations reads like a PWI 500. Oh, I already did that bit? Are you sure? Okay, fine. Hardy left WWE by walking through the crowd and into the darkness. And despite his sobriety coming into question, Tony Khan couldn't resist the allure of the ex-WWE guy. An allure that'll come back to bite Tony Khan throughout this entire list. Not because it's bad to sign ex-WWE guys, but it's a fool's errand when you have as little control over a locker room as Tony Khan does. Shortly after signing with AEW, Hardy was suspended for a DUI. It's kind of like how Jon Moxley won world titles in both WWE and AEW, but the drunk driving version. Hardy is now singing his swan song in TNA, and the notes are actually quite beautiful. He seems to be doing just fine. Big Swole voiced her frustrations based on AEW's lack of diversity, a talking point I made famous months before with my goated video about all elite white people. Adam Cole is set to hit the open market. Question is, does he want to stay in the black school or move to the white school?
Wow, you're in the mix with Pro Wrestling Bits.
Ah, the good old days. That voiceover girl says hi, by the way. She just had triplets. I should bring her back. Anyway, Swole's comments resulted in a thorough response from a trust fund CEO who was raised on a message board. And it showed, quote, "The top 2 AEW execs are Brown, me and Mega. Jade, Bowens, Caster, Dante, Nyla, Isaiah, and Mark Quinn all went on TV this month. The TBS title tournament has been very diverse. I let Swole's contract expire as I felt her wrestling wasn't good enough. Hashtag AEW Rampage, street fight tonight," end quote. Oh yes, the My Best Friend is Black defense, made popular by every white girl with a bob who wants to touch my hair. Tony Khan spent all New Year's Eve dealing with the backlash on the South African Bird app. But then again, it's not like the message board messiah had any plans otherwise. The 10th biggest controversy was the backstage fist fight between Sammy Guevara and Andrade El Idolo. Knowing what we know now, Andrade and Sammy are basically the same person. Andrade has a history of controversies outside the ring. Most recently, he was shit-canned by WWE for wellness issues. Sammy Guevara has also been disciplined for issues outside the ring, including past comments about Sasha Banks, a fist fight with Eddie Kingston, and concussing Jeff Hardy, which took away his pillar status as Tony Khan banished him to ROH. Sammy married a wrestler. Andrade married a wrestler whom he divorced. No judgment, we love divorce on this app. You'd think Andrade and Guevara would be a tag team, but instead, they clashed over their similarities as talented but hot-headed pro wrestlers. It all came to a head when the two went back and forth on Twitter, causing Tony Khan to promptly step in. Khan met with both individuals immediately and nipped their issues in the bud as they shook hands and avoided controversy. Ha! Just playing. That sissy CEO didn't do shit, despite both talents claiming it was on site when they saw each other that day on Dynamite. I'd love to give Tony Twitterfingers the benefit of the doubt and say maybe he wasn't on Twitter at the time, but it's Tony Twitterfingers. The only time he's not on Twitter is when he goes to check his Discord. Turns out it was on site. Andrade and Guevara threw hands and it made national news. Andrade forced himself out of AEW shortly thereafter, and Guevara continues to rot away in Jacksonville despite his talents and initial coronation as one of AEW's 4 pillars. MJF caused headlines after no-showing an AEW Fan Fest, but to this day, nobody knows how real this storyline was. I've never heard of an AEW Fan Fest before or after this, other than the media scrums, but what followed was a tidal wave of backlash that overshadowed what was supposed to be a crowning moment for Wardlow. Wardlow went on to squash MJF that night at Double or Nothing, but nobody cared. MJF sucked all the headlines out of Double or Nothing, and his loss was a mere footnote note. Sounds like somebody who went into business for himself to create a distraction from the fact that he was gonna get squashed. TBH sounds like a good worker to me, because MJF went on to win a world title, and poor Wardlow has fallen apart in AEW after projecting as one of their biggest stars at his peak. CM Punk's saga in AEW is responsible for almost half the spots on this list, and we'll start with his dueling shoot promos alongside Hangman Adam Page. Page went off script during a Dynamite promo ahead of their match at All Out when he said,
"You talk a big game about workers' rights, yeah? Well, you've shown the exact opposite since you've gotten here."
Punk was pissed, but he got hurt shortly after beating Hangman Page for the strap, so he didn't get a chance to truly respond. When he did, Punk eviscerated Hangman, calling him out in his home city knowing Page wasn't there to show up. Punk demanded an apology that was as loud as the disrespect, live and in living color. And what followed, well, you'll see. MJF remains in character almost 100% of the time, but when he was out of character, he was a backstabber. Britt Baker's words, not mine. Actually, those weren't even Britt Baker's words. A fake quote recently went viral attributed to Britt Baker allegedly calling Max and his new wife Alicia a tout backstabbers. But as an OG told me, nobody cares about the truth when the lie is more entertaining. Baker's issues with MJF stemmed from a backstage issue when a toot overheard the DMD talking SHIT about the owner of the BBB. A toot snitched, like any Canadian would because they're terrified of the law, and MJF confronted Baker himself. MJF reportedly punched a hole in the wall like a blacked out frat boy, and Britt Baker was suspended by Tony Khan. Britt has seldom been on TV since. Britt hasn't appeared on AEW television in 2025. In fact, her last match was November of 2024. In 2025, Britt's biggest feud of the year has been with that nigga Ibu after he lied on her. Britt clapped back and Ibu was fired from his internship as a whiteful gossip queen shortly thereafter. He gone. As of this writing, Britt Baker is out here chilling on a crowded AEW bench. The same bench she would have shared with Cody Rhodes if he was still under contract with AEW. Thankfully, Cody's contract expired while he was still in an AEW ring. Literally, Rhodes' expired contract in AEW became such a controversy, it gave birth to his WWE catchphrase. Rhodes knew he was talking to a dirt sheet audience that smells like shit. Their words and mine. And with the contract drama as an elephant in the room the size of David Bix, Cody opened his promo by saying, "So what do you guys want to talk about?"
What do you guys want to talk about?
Cody showed up to WrestleMania 38 2 months later, and the rest is history. Rhodes and Khan agreed to never talk about their issues in public. That's how you know it was bad. After being banned from ever challenging from an AEW world title and booed out of Jacksonville, Cody got the last laugh by emerging as WWE's quarterback and the two-time #1 wrestler in the PWI 500, whatever that means. Let's go, Cody! Cousin Phil is back to kick off the top 5, but this time it's because of the Young Bucks. You see, in April of 2024, AEW made one of its most boneheaded decisions ever when the Young Bucks decided to air backstage footage of the Brawl In. It's one thing if CM Punk was under contract and he was going to have a program with the Elite and Jack Perry, but he wasn't. CM Punk was long gone. In fact, one can argue that he baited the Young Bucks into crashing out and showing real-life footage on a scripted TV show. Days before Dynamite, Punk appeared on Ariel Helwani's podcast to talk about his rendition of the Brawl with Jack Perry.
I didn't punch anybody. I just choked somebody a little bit.
The Young Bucks showed the footage, and it turns out Punk didn't punch Jack Perry. He just choked him a little bit. The ratings for the CM Punk-themed episode were massive. But when it became clear that AEW was not going to pay any of this off with a CM Punk return or a match, viewers ran off in droves like the outside of Home Depot when ICE shows up. By the way, this isn't on the list, but a mini controversy is 6'7" Brody King pulling up with an Abolish ICE t-shirt, like any king would. Tony Khan, whose family has ties to Trump, quickly distanced himself immediately from the left-leaning stance, and as Oprah Winfrey is my witness, you will never, ever see Brody King or anybody in AEW wearing anti-ICE merch ever again. The next controversy on this list was so hilarious, it's the whole thumbnail of this video, because number 4 was Tony Khan's Harvey Weinstein joke. This controversy powered up the ranks because it wasn't just some pro wrestling drama consumed by subredditors with nothing better to do. This was a crossover mainstream controversy during the NFL draft. Professional comedian Tony Khan appeared on the NFL Network to do a little stand-up, and he ended up making a vile grape joke about WWE. Further proof of how feral Tony Clifton Khan really is, which is what happens when you're raised on a message board because your billionaire daddy was too busy to burp you with a bottle. The streets say some hoes are for the streets. When it comes to Tony Khan, that hoe is for the tweets. And he does not belong on television.
AEW, like the Pepsi of pro wrestling, WWE's like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. And I'm really proud of what we do down here.
You might notice Khan was wearing a neck brace, which he used to keep up kayfabe after taking an awkward bump and EVP driver from the Young Bucks. Why was Tony Khan awkward on camera? Because, say it with me, he does not belong on television. Aw, you never say it with me. Tony Khan embarrassed himself on the NFL Network, but it wasn't even his biggest embarrassment as head of AEW. At Revolution in 2021, with AEW on fire, the end of an unsanctioned exploding barbed wire match was designed to quite literally set the AEW ring on fire. At the conclusion of a great match, the climax built to a countdown to a massive explosion. When the clock struck 0, the bombs let off an explosion that looked weaker than Gilbert's pyro. Thank God this happened in the empty arena era because fans online were pissed. AEW is an industry leader in incels when it comes to the pro wrestling fan base, and had this disappointing finish happened in a full building, I can only imagine the nerd rage and potential grass shooters who would have descended upon that ring. When it comes to violent, real-life backlash, AEW quite literally dodged a bullet that night. But when I tell you AEW heard all about this on Twitter, thankfully Tony Khan was refunded for the crappy finish. But when I asked for my money back after falling asleep during a Kyle Fletcher main event, they ghosted me like I was an AEW critic asking for a media credential. Wait a minute, I am an AEW critic who got his credentials pulled by Tony Al-Sheikh. I should do a video on that. Stay tuned. Fans had no choice but to stay tuned to AEW during its short-lived CM Punk era, for reasons both in and out of the ring. On September 4th, 2022, right after winning the AEW World title for a second time, CM Punk went off in an iconic shoot promo, tearing apart Colt Cabana, Hangman Adam Page, the Young Bucks, and even the Pittsburgh Penguins for good measure. Tony Khan sat terrified and might have soiled himself as Punk buried AEW and everything she stands for. Shortly after that promo, it was on site as CM Punk brawled with the Young Bucks in his locker room. Ace Steel, who was Team CM Punk, allegedly threw a chair at Nick Jackson's face, giving him a black eye. It was the ugliest scene in the history of AEW until we get to number 1, because the most controversial moment in AEW history was the Brawl In. Almost 1 year after the Brawl Out, CM Punk defended the Real World Championship against Samoa Joe in what would prove to be his final match. Punk recently celebrated his 3rd year as Real AEW World Champion, a record for that company. Nobody's beat him for it. Prior to Punk's opening match against Samoa Joe, Punk got into a real-life backstage fight with Jack Perry. During the pre-show, Perry taunted CM Punk by using real glass, something Punk advised against privately during the soon-to-be-canceled Collision. Instead of taking Punk's advice, Perry mocked Punk publicly. Punk was fired shortly after the Brawl In, one which made Tony Khan fear for his life.
Today I terminated Phil Brooks, CM Punk.
And dating back to right before the Brawl In, AEW handled CM Punk about as poorly as I've ever seen any booker manage his talent. Tony Khan gave Punk his own show in the soon-to-be-canceled Collision to try to keep both parties separated. Much like the Andrade Sammy Guevara drama, Tony Khan never intervened when it became obvious that shit was about to go down. Khan just sat quietly, scared to death, fearing for his life. Khan was helpless as his biggest star crashed out on the entire promotion. It remains AEW's biggest and most costly controversy. Check out this video and subscribe. What are some of your favorite AEW controversies? Tell me in the comments!